we're coming down the stretch. We're going to talk to, by the way, Chris Mannix coming up next in the NBA bubble down in Orlando. News that's out that's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things because kind of what you would have anticipated. Giannis is being suspended one game, so the final game before the playoffs start for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, that game is against the Grizz over the battle for the 8-9 spot, whether it's going to be the Grizz, the Suns, or the Portland Trailblazers who end up getting that top spot. And it's actually turned into the only real drama that's in the playoffs at all in the bubble is who's going to get that 8-9 spot. And anyway, we'll go down to Orlando and talk with Chris Mannix here in a little bit. A couple of other news stories that I think are certainly worthy of paying attention to. The continued fallout in college football over the decision of the Big Ten and the Pac-12 to not play. And I feel so much for Big Ten and Pac-12 fans out there because I just feel like your university presidents and your conference commissioners failed you. Because if you actually look at the data, and you just heard me talking about the situation in Iowa, but I continue to kind of just find it to be a fascinating metaphor for the universe that we're in right now. Iowa State can play. And not only can they play, they are scheduling a game early in the season. Check this, Dub. I think I saw the story that I know every Big 12 team, right? The schedule came out, and the Big 12 has got all of their conference games. But every Big 12 team can also play one out-of-conference game. And I believe Iowa State just signed up Louisiana to play as their out-of-conference game, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is I kind of think that it would be cool if Iowa State got to play against Iowa. Right? I mean, I know that's the big rivalry game there, and the Big Ten shut down everything and said we're only playing conference games. But why couldn't Iowa maybe find a way, even if they only played one football game, if it's the first football game of the year, to potentially play against Iowa State? It doesn't sound like that's going to happen, but that seems like at least a small measure of justice in the state of Iowa. But for everybody out there, think about how ridiculous this situation is that Iowa State can play all of their Big 12 conference games, and they can get everything set up. And Dub tells me that I'm right. Iowa State's playing on September 12th against the University of Louisiana. So that's their out-of-conference game. But Iowa State gets to play 9 conference games against the Big 12. They get to play 1 out-of-conference game. And Iowa, in the same state, these guys are separated by just a couple of hours. They aren't allowed to play because the Big Ten won't let them. If you're the governor of Iowa, or if you're just a fan of sports in Iowa, you have to be sitting back saying, wait a minute, all of our high schools can play. We just finished the Iowa baseball state championships and played with almost 30,000 fans present. They didn't just finish high school baseball in Iowa. They played it with almost 30,000 fans present. And now you're in a situation where Iowa State fans are like, oh, this is awesome. We're going to get to play our season. And Iowa fans aren't going to get to play at all and watch their team play. And I can't even imagine if you're a college coach in that state or if you're a player, because you got to be looking around saying, wait a minute, the on-the-ground situation at Iowa State and at Iowa inside the same state borders is no different at all. So how in the world are we ending up with such a dramatically different situation in terms of what the rules are for playing? It's fundamentally illogical. The Big Ten is getting it completely wrong. And we know that the Iowa Hawkeyes disagree with the decision because they were one of the Big Ten schools voting against the idea of canceling the fall season. And so the data here, and we're going to talk with Dr. David Chow in hour 3, and I think we're going to have an intelligent discussion about the coronavirus and risk factors and everything else. But it just doesn't make any sense. It's fundamentally illogical for anyone with a rational brain at all for there to be a distinction in what Iowa State and Iowa are doing. They should have the same result. And the Big Ten's getting it wrong, in my opinion, and the Big 12's getting it right. And I give credit to the Big 12 for standing steadfast here and not buckling under the pressure that is easy to fall victim to from what I call the Corona bros in the media. There are a lot of people on social media every day who want to destroy and tear down, and I don't believe at all that a spring football season is a viable option. And so I think the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC are getting this 100% right. And I think that Iowa is getting screwed by the Big Ten. And that's why on some level, I feel like instead of playing the University of Louisiana, which, by the way, congrats to the University of Louisiana for getting that game added, like Iowa State should be playing against Iowa, their nose, and say, all right, if we're not going to be able to play a regular season, we might as well play the Super Bowl of Iowa and go head-to-head with our in-state rival and see what happens. And I bet there are people in Iowa right now who are listening to Outkick, and they're like, that's actually a really good idea. And if I were the governor of Iowa, I'd be coming out and I'd say, screw the Big Ten decision. We're happy to be in the Big Ten most years, but they flat out got this wrong. Why can't we play against our in-state rival? And if you go back and listen to this show when the Big Ten initially made their decision that we're going conference game only, I said that made no sense. You can't take away a school's right to play against a rival in the same state that they're already in. This is, to me, a great illustration of the fundamental collapse of logic in this country. Iowa State can play because the Big 12 got it right. Iowa can't play because the Big 10 got it wrong, yet they're in the same state, nearly identical conditions, just separated by a couple of hours. It's not a logical decision in any way.